MCPS Superintendent Monifa McKnight resigned her position on February 2nd, following a contentious review of her handling of sexual harassment allegations against former principal Joel Beetleman. McKnight stated in her letter of resignation that the past year has been a distraction, and there is now a question of whom I agreed to serve, and I must control my own fate and reputation. Maricé, the NAACP accuses the Board of Education of making McKnight a scapegoat for their own political reasons. Linda Plummer, president of the Montgomery County chapter of the NAACP, stated this: "It would appear that such a request to resign, is based on factors which are external to Dr. McKnight's performance and comprise a politically expedient solution to address press reports about systemic failures in the MCP process for handling employee complaints." Do you think McKnight was treated unfairly?
You know, Casey, I think Dr. McKnight was given a non-viable journey from the beginning of her appointment. I do agree that the expediency of this process, actually, I don't think that there was really a process. I think there are due process rights here, but Dr. McKnight and her, whoever was advising her, I understand that she hired an attorney, chose to go ahead and accept the Board of Ed's request for her resignation. Even the county executive said, the issues underlying the awful management of issues going on with the Board of Ed and the school system predated the superintendent's tenure. We heard from Dr. McKnight herself. Upon her annual performance evaluations, the Board of Ed never expressed any concern about her performance. Never give her, every year she passed with flying colors. So it does come as a surprise. And I think that the NAACP has done a good job of making sure that they're shedding light to this issue. I think that Dr. McKnight does have control over her fate, and if I were in her shoes and I was put into this position, I think I would also follow my counsel's advice.
So we're going to get into this a little later, but the Board of Education issued a public apology on all of this, and a rather incredible statement. But I want to first address this to Laurie. Laurie, as Maricé stated, when McKnight arrived, the school board had already been receiving criticism for the way MCPS oversaw the pandemic, bringing students back into the classroom. And, teachers made the unusual step of declaring that they had no confidence in MCPS. So was McKnight placed in a no-win situation?
Well, all the superintendents across the nation were in the same position. They all had to deal with the same pandemic, and some of them recovered through the process pretty well compared to MCPS. Now, it was a difficult position she was in. There's never a good time to be a superintendent, actually, but I think that the problem was her focus. I think that instead of, when you have no kids in the classroom and they're studying online, and so many are not even watching the screen, there's going to be a problem with academics. And I did not hear a focus on really trying to get these kids back on track academically. Instead, we kept hearing DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, equity everywhere, and how there was the anti-racist audit, and that focus on racism. And you know what? It was all about, I looked through the anti-racist audit, and not one word about anti-Semitism. So yeah. What was the money spent on that? It was not focused. Even when they do something like that, they don't focus on the right part of what they should be focusing on. So
we got to focus on really what happened with Beetleman and how he was hired. Yeah. And take a look at that. And Maricé, as I mentioned, the Board of Education, the president of the Board of Education, issued a public policy in a letter. Rather amazing. I think it was because they were being pressured by the county council to really come clean on what the problem was. But it seems, to many observers, that McKnight was fired because, they were covering up the Board of Education was getting the heat. They were covering up their own problems. And, we saw a similar situation with the planning board last year. The council stepped in and started making changes.
No, I agree. I mean, council member Don Lukey, actually, I think she tweeted about this, or the new platform X, mentioned, okay, well, there's a change in leadership, but still there's no transparency as to what happened here. And I agree. I think the Board of Education did, in response to public pressure and also from the MCCPTA and other stakeholders. I mean, in Carla Silvestra's, the Board of Ed president's own comments, she acknowledges that, that the Board of Ed has not listened to its own employees, has not properly investigated complaints, and it has also not created a process that encourages employees to feel safe to come forward, dealing with this, incredible sexual harassment and promotion scandal. It's really, it's devastating to watch a woman of color. And I think in response to what Laurie was mentioning earlier, the reason why there's conversation about equity was because the county council had just applied the equity and DEI lens to all of the policies. So that's why, and Dr. McKnight was coming in as the prior superintendent decided to retire at the time of the pandemic. So, that oftentimes when it comes to crises, when you need the leaders to step up, sometimes the people that are like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and bow out when I still have a good track record. And so then
that's the thing that bothers me the most about this, Maricé and Laurie. Both of, the fact that there were numerous complaints about Beetleman and his sexual harassment, whether, there were hostile work environment issues or true sexual harassment issues. I mean, they didn't take these things seriously, which is really, I think, the most disturbing
well, and this
part.
has been going on for years. I mean, when I was at PTA in 2010 at the county level, there were so many principals who were not, who were moving to other places, moving up to headquarters, and we knew about their background, but we were always in PTA asking for some kind of a process where you could share the information from the other school, but it looks like they wouldn't share that. But now it looks like they're going to be doing that with a new software system. So I'm really pleased to hear that. I hope it really happens.
Well, this is a kind of a question, and I'll address it to Maricé first, and then to you, Laurie. I just checked the reading proficiency for Montgomery County schools, and it's at 45% of students are reading at grade level. If I were a parent with a child in Montgomery County, I wouldn't be happy with that.
No,
that, you're setting, obviously if 55% of the students can't read and write when they get out of Montgomery County schools, they're destined for failure. The school system needs to focus more on the fundamentals, in my opinion. What do you think?
I totally agree with that. So what I said earlier, I think the new interim superintendent, I'm wondering if she'll possibly become the superintendent, Monique Felder. Her focus is equity from when she was back in North Carolina. So I hope she's also going to look at other things. And, we do want to close the gap, but we also want to raise the bar for everyone. Everyone.
Look, we have an African-American governor who, in his book, attributes his success to his grandmother sending him to in his case, a military school so he could learn and be educated. Why can't those same principles filter down in our public school system? Maricé, I'll let you have the last word here.
Well, I'm actually a product of public schools, but I was going to say, in terms of the checks and balances here, when we're not happy with the product that we're receiving, we have to hold those people accountable. But in reality, when you look at the Board of Ed, the people who vote, we're talking about less than 1% of voters they're even aware that they have these representatives for their school districts. So, I think there was a question about, is there going to be a day of reckoning? When we're looking at the results of this firm, Jackson Lewis, that was hired by the Board of Ed to look at especially what was happening in the Department of Compliance and Investigations, what they discovered is that they didn't take any complaints or investigations seriously when it came to anonymous sexual harassment complaints.
Maricé, I hate breaking you off. We're running out of time. And of course, my solution to all of this is school choice and vouchers. Parents should have the opportunity to choose the schools they want to send their kids to.
I disagree.
They will see a difference.